Hi y'all, welcome to my channel. My name is Raya. I am starting this channel because I wanted to kind of document my journey. Sorry, the dog and the cat are playing over there. So if you hear some stuff, it's my animals. But I just kind of wanted to document my journey with MS. I just got diagnosed a couple weeks ago. I have been having symptoms for the past 3 years, and I'm finally been diagnosed, and I'm going to be starting treatment soon. My first flare that I can think of started when I was working as a CNA, Certified Nurse's Assistant, at a nursing home. And I was working my normal shift. I worked very long shifts, lots of hours, very late shifts, and I'd never had problems before. I had just some chronic low back pain, not like anything serious, just always achy kinda. And so throughout my shift, it just started to get worse and worse. And I didn't do anything specific to hurt it. I didn't lift anything heavy. I didn't do anything. It just started getting worse and worse throughout my shift. And towards the end of my shift, I was working with another CNA, and we're doing our last bed change before shift change, before I get to go. And as we're changing the bedding and everything and getting this person ready to go to bed, my left leg goes completely numb from like about my hip all the way down to my toes. And that was something brand new that never happened before. And I told the other CNA that I was working with, because she knew that my back had started hurting really bad, and I had taken some ibuprofen and stuff, and it hadn't gotten any better. And then when I noticed my left leg went numb, I was like, hey, my left leg just went numb. And she was like, that's not good. You should probably get that checked out. So my mother is an RN, a registered nurse, and she actually worked at the same nursing home that I did, but she was off that day. And I was currently living with my parents at that time. I was 18 at the time and was living with my parents. And so I went home after that shift. It was pretty late, and told my mom what had been going on, that my back pain had gotten excruciating, and then my left leg had went numb, and it didn't come back. It was still numb when I got home, and she was pretty concerned. She thought maybe I might have a blood clot or something, but we weren't sure. So we were gonna wait and see, since it was pretty late at night when I got home. It was probably about midnight. See if it was still like that in the morning, and then if it was still like that in the morning, we were gonna go to the emergency room. So I woke up the next morning. I was still in a lot of pain, and my leg was still completely numb. And so she was concerned, and so we went to the emergency room thinking possibly might have a blood clot in my leg or something. So we went to the emergency room, and they did a Doppler on my leg, scanned me, made sure I didn't have a blood clot. They said, no, you don't have a blood clot. It's probably a pinched nerve or something in your back. And at this point, I was still in excruciating pain. I didn't even want to walk or anything. So they decided to give me some morphine. I'd never had morphine before. My father, morphine does not do anything for him. It's like giving him water. He doesn't even feel it. It doesn't help with his pain at all. So I was assuming that there was a chance it might not even work due to my family background. But as soon as they started pumping the morphine into my IV, my whole body seized up and froze like this, and I burst into tears, and I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I started to have a panic attack. And so they stopped giving me the morphine and found out that I was allergic to it. And so instead of the morphine, they gave me some anti-inflammatory medicine and sent me home. Told me to follow up with a pain management doctor or my PCP. So following that, I had to quit my job as a CNA because I could not stand and walk for more than 5 minutes at a time, or I would fall on the floor in pain. So that lasted months. It got better over a series of months, but I was out of work for probably 3 months before I could finally work again and function. And saw a series of different doctors, neurologists, orthopedics, got a series of imaging and everything. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, thought maybe it was just, I've been told everything from fibromyalgia to a bulging disc. I've had injections in my spine. I've had trigger point injections. I've had a facet block. I've had, they wanted to do a rhizotomy on my nerves in my back, but I decided not to do that because the facet block didn't really work. It only lasted for a day, and the rhizotomy isn't a permanent fix. It's more of a temporary thing, and then you have to get it redone every so many years because the nerves regrow, and it was going to be extremely expensive. So I decided not to do that. But I was on a lot of medications. I was on 1,500 milligrams of gabapentin every day, to the point where it opened up a stomach ulcer. And so I had to stop taking the gabapentin for the nerve relaxant. And I was on lots of medication. I did physical therapy. I did everything that you could possibly think of. And over the course of 3 years, I was told I had fibromyalgia. I was told I had degenerative disc disease. I was told I had a couple of bulging discs, but not enough that they could fix them, just enough that it would hurt. Like I said, I had multiple injections and everything. I've seen rheumatologists, I've seen everybody. Nobody could really pinpoint why this all of a sudden started happening. And I had, the main flare-up was the first one when I went to the hospital, and then I had a couple of different flare-ups after that, but not as severe and not as long-lasting. More just a flare-up of the back pain and the trouble walking, but nothing super severe. Until recently, a couple months ago, I woke up and my boyfriend was sleeping over, and I woke up next to him to get ready for work, and he didn't have to work that day, so I was trying to be quiet and make sure I didn't wake him up. So I slid off the end of the bed to get up, and as soon as I went to stand up, my legs collapsed underneath me and I just fell to the floor. And he woke up and was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And I got up and I was perfectly fine. I thought maybe I thought maybe I just wasn't fully awake yet or something, or my legs just weren't ready to, I don't know. It was just a weird fluke thing. So I got ready for work and I was feeling kind of weird, but nothing alarming. And by the time I got to work, the whole left side of my body wasn't working. I couldn't walk right. I couldn't grab things with my hand. My speech was stuttery, and I was very confused. I couldn't complete sentences, and I couldn't get the words that I'm trying to say. And so I thought that maybe I was having a stroke, because that's symptoms of a stroke. One-sided weakness and cognitive impairment. And then my blood pressure is normally pretty low to good. It's normally very, very fine. Never had problems with my blood pressure. And so I took my blood pressure, and it was extremely high. It was, I don't remember, I believe it was 180s over 110 or something like that, which is extremely high for me. I never have high blood pressure. So I thought maybe I'm having a stroke. So my coworkers all wanted me to go to the hospital. So I drove myself to the hospital that my mom works at. That's just down the street from the doctor's office that I work at. And got there, they checked me in, my blood pressure was still very high. Got me back, I sat in the hallway for a while, finally got me to a triage room, and a ER doctor came back and saw me for a couple minutes, wanted to get some imaging, some MRIs, he actually at the time thought possibly MS. So they sent me back to get some blood work, urinalysis, and then I was gonna see a neurologist. So went and did the blood work and the urinalysis, and then got into a room, and then a neurologist came in and saw me. She didn't listen to anything I had to say. As soon as she walked in, she saw me and thought she knew what was going on without asking me any questions. She didn't speak very good English, so it was kind of hard explaining what was going on to her. So she immediately told me that I was just having a complex migraine. My head did not hurt at all. I've had migraines in the past, but this was not a migraine. I told her that, and I told her my head does not hurt, I'm not having any dizziness, I'm not having any light sensitivity. It is just the left side of my body will not work, and I'm just very foggy brained. And so since the other doctor had already ordered the MRIs, he ordered a MRI of my entire spine and my brain with and without contrast, because he thought possibly MS. And to test for MS and to see the lesions in the brain, you have to test with contrast. So she sent me back to get my MRIs. I went and got them, I laid in the machine, and I fall asleep every single time I have an MRI. I fall asleep in the machine, can't help it, I don't know. I know it's totally weird because it's very loud and lots of people have lots of anxiety about it, but I completely fall asleep. So they wake me up at the end of the MRI, and I'm assuming that they're gonna come back and give me the IV to do the contrast. And so when they wake me up, they're like, "You're done." I was like, "Well, I thought they were gonna do it with contrast." And the MRI tech told me, "Oh, she changed it at the last minute. We're only doing it without contrast." And so I was very frustrated because that meant she wasn't really taking the MS possibility seriously. She was just going off of what she thought I was having a complex migraine without looking at the whole symptoms and everything. So I got back into the room. She said, "There's nothing in your MRI stability-wise in your vertebrae and everything that looks like it should be causing any nerve impingement or anything. You do have a couple of slightly bulged discs, but nothing too bad. And since I already had the diagnosis of degenerative disc disease, it wasn't a shocker." And she said that it didn't look like I was having a stroke, but she didn't do any MRI with contrast or anything, so she didn't really take anything that I had seriously. And after 3 years of being not taken seriously by several doctors, I was just very, very frustrated. And I was there by myself because my mother was still working she works for a neurosurgeon at the same hospital, but up in the professional buildings at the doctor's office side. And so she was still working and was gonna meet me down there at the end of her shift. And so after that, they sent me to they gave me some pain medication and an anti-inflammatory, and then sent me to a secondary room for waiting to get discharged, I guess. And so the first doctor that I saw came back in and was like, "Okay, so we have your labs back and everything, and she said that we're seeing you for a complex migraine, so you should just follow up with neurology. And he went through my labs with me. He said in the labs, your vitamin D and your vitamin B12 are both low, and it does look like you have a UTI, but did not treat me for those. They gave me a vitamin D pill in the hospital, the 5,000 unit once weekly pills that I had already been taking previously and then ran out of them and didn't refill them. Because I already knew that I had a vitamin D deficiency from a rheumatologist that I saw. So that was no shock, but they didn't treat me for the vitamin B12 deficiency, and they didn't treat the UTI. They sent me home with nothing. So at that time, while I was waiting to be discharged, I was very, very frustrated and very angry, and felt like I wasn't being taken seriously, and that I was just continuing to get worse, and nobody cared. So my mother finally met me down, and she brought her neurologist, or her neurosurgeon that she works with, Dr. Patel, down with her to see me in the emergency room. And he evaluated me himself, and he thought that I did have some sort of MS type thing, but was very angry that she changed the orders at the last minute and didn't do the MRIs with contrast to even check for MS. So he looked at all my records and all my findings and everything, and actually called on his cell phone a local neurologist that he knew, and got me an appointment with him the next day. And so I went home. My mother helped me get home, and none of my symptoms had changed. I still had no control of the left side of my body, and I was extremely foggy. I actually got lost on my way home from the hospital to my apartment, which is not very far at all, and I had made the trip several times. So that just shows how truly confused I was. So she helped me get up to my apartment, and then the next day she went with me to see this new neurologist. Now, Dr. Patel didn't really know very much about this new neurologist. He had just had dinner with him recently and had his phone number in his phone, and he happened to answer the phone. So that has nothing to do with Dr. Patel. But I went and saw this new neurologist, and looked like a brand new office, didn't have very much stuff in it, didn't have any nurses, just had him and 2 receptionists. So he came back to see me, did a very short evaluation, and just said I'm probably just having either complex migraine, or it was all in my head and that I was imagining it, and it was due to more psychological issues than any real issues. So he had basically made up his mind before seeing me, because he saw a 21-year-old healthy looking girl, and didn't assume that anything bad could be happening without doing any further investigation. He didn't want to do any testing of his own. He just went off of what had been done at the hospital, didn't have any opinions really of his own. He just decided to go off of whatever anybody else had said. So I, after being told that it was all in my head and that I was imagining everything, I got extremely angry and left the appointment, because I wasn't going to sit there and let him just tell me that I was crazy and that it was all in my head and that I was imagining the whole left side of my body just not working anymore. So me and my mother left, and very frustrated. And so slowly, after weeks and weeks, I regained function of my body, and I went back to work and I was fine. And then a couple weeks ago, I got up in the morning. I was feeling a little odd, but nothing super bad yet. So I went to work, and by the time I got to work, my leg wasn't working and my right arm wasn't working. my left leg and my right arm weren't working, and I was having the same cognitive symptoms and everything. So at this point, it was a pattern. It wasn't just a one-off fluke. So I told my mother, and she got me in with a new neurologist that she works with at her office, that works with her neurosurgeons, and that she's very confident in and had been actually talking to previously about my symptoms. And so he got me in that day. So I had my boyfriend come and pick me up from work because they didn't think that I was safe to drive. And he brought me over to the neurologist. I saw him, and he reviewed all my symptoms, actually talked to me, and asked me my symptoms, and didn't just go off of old results, and decided that yes, I probably have MS, just because I didn't have any visible lesions at the time. One was because they didn't do the MRI with contrast, so they wouldn't have been able to see them anyways, and two, you can have non-visible lesions and still have MS. You don't have to have physical damage yet to have MS. It can still be MS. It just hasn't done enough damage yet. So he wasn't gonna wait for it to do permanent damage to my brain before treating me, because I have all the symptoms and it's a repeated thing. So in order to control that flare, he put me on a 5-day course of Solumedrol steroid, and to calm down the flare, and then wanted to see me back. I'm supposed to be seeing him on this coming Thursday to start MS medication. We talked about a couple different ones. The one I'm probably going to be starting with is a once-weekly auto-injector medication. And he also wants to get a spinal tap done to see if test further for MS. So when I see him this Thursday, I should be finding out when we're going to do the spinal tap and getting started on the new medication. I have, since that flare, gained, I am back to normal. I'm back to, I can walk, I can talk, I can function both of my hands and everything. My brain is still a little foggy, and it took a lot to get to where I am right now through the course of steroids, and it takes a toll on your body. Incredible fatigue, pain, psychological issues, because I already have bipolar disorder, manic depressive bipolar disorder, and that is also attributed to MS. It causes a lot of bipolar-like symptoms, so they're kind of tied in together, but the steroids can kind of mess with your brain chemistry and cause issues with bipolar disorder and stuff. So, this past Wednesday was my 22nd birthday, and me and my boyfriend went for a week of paid vacation to the beach, to Corpus Christi, Monday through Friday, and just had a vacation and just relaxed, and it was exactly what I needed. It was fantastic, and I feel so much better coming back, and start back work on Tuesday, because this weekend is Memorial Weekend, so we're off on Monday. So I will be back at work on Tuesday, and we're just gonna go from there. And I'm just wanting to kind of record the process so that not only can I look back on it and see the progression of the disease and see how I deal with it, but also to possibly help other people just getting diagnosed with MS. I'm 22, just recently 22, but and it's not popular. It's not a popular disease, but it is getting more popular, and it is more popular in women than men. And most people get diagnosed around their 20s. So, but I've been dealing with this and having all these symptoms for 3 years now. So this is just putting a name finally to what's actually going on with me. So it hasn't really affected me as much as it might affect somebody who didn't know. I knew that there was something wrong. It was just getting somebody to believe me and getting somebody to put a name to what was actually going on and have a plan of how to treat it. Instead of, oh, that sucks, here's some pain medication, here's some nerve relaxers, let's just dope you up and hope you can function. This is more of a, let's get you on a path to treat this and get you more functionable daily. So, I just wanted to kind of put this message out there for anybody who's recently diagnosed or is having issues and hasn't found a doctor that will actually take them seriously and give them any answers. I am right there with you, and I believe you, and your symptoms are real. And that was the hardest thing for me, is getting somebody who believed me and took me seriously, because they see a tiny little 21-year-old girl and they think, oh, she's fine, there's nothing wrong with her, she's fine, she's healthy. But it's finding somebody who will look at you and think, but what if she isn't? What if there is actually something wrong? And you just have to keep searching and keep trying to find somebody who will take you seriously. I have seen countless doctors for countless specialties all over the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I finally found somebody who actually takes me seriously. And I love the doctor that I see now. His name is Dr. Harris, and he works at Arlington Memorial Hospital with Dr. Bianco, the doctor that my mother works for. And I'm just eager to get this process started and to see what my future holds and what where this is going to take me, and see if it will actually help, and see if how well I'll be able to function further down the road, and see how well this controls my flares and everything. So if you have any questions about MS, or any questions about doctors, or what specialties to see, or anything related to medical questions, or even psychological questions, just leave them in the comments below, and I will try and get to anybody who leaves me questions. Just stay hopeful, and somebody will believe you eventually. You just have to find them. You just have to keep looking, and I believe you. And I know it's real, and I know what you're feeling is real. So just keep hope. Don't lose hope. That's what I wanted to leave you with. Okay, well, everybody have a great day, night, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and see you next time. Bye.